They told Sarah Carter to accept that her daughter was gone forever. But she refused to believe it. 18 years later, the truth hiding in a Vermont basement would prove that sometimes the most haunting cold cases have endings nobody sees coming. I need you to imagine something for a second. Your child walks 3 blocks home from school, a route they've taken hundreds of times, and they just vanish into thin air. No screams, no witnesses, no trace. That's exactly what happened to 9-year-old Emily Carter in 2003. And what investigators discovered nearly 2 decades later is going to challenge everything you think you know about missing children cases. See, most people assume these stories end one of 2 ways. The child is found quickly, or they're gone forever. But Emily's case, it falls into this disturbing third category that most true crime followers don't even know exists. I've spent months researching this investigation unsolved for 18 years, interviewing family members, reviewing evidence files, and piecing together a timeline that honestly kept me up at night. What makes this child disappearance so particularly chilling isn't just the abduction itself. It's what happened during those missing years and how Emily was hiding in plain sight the entire time. We're talking about a level of psychological manipulation that most people can't even comprehend. The kind of dark storytelling that sounds too twisted to be real. But it is real, and cases like this are more common than law enforcement wants to admit. The shocking revelations in Emily's case force us to confront some uncomfortable truths about how predators operate and how missing persons investigations can miss what's right in front of them. This isn't one of those unsolved cases that ends with speculation and theories. We have answers, we have evidence, and we have a survivor who's still trying to process what happened to her. But I'm warning you now, this heartbreaking story doesn't have a clean resolution. What happened to Emily Carter between October 2003 and March 2021 is a testament to both human resilience and human evil. Understanding her story might just change how you think about child safety, stranger danger, and the thousands of vanished kids whose faces still stare at us from missing posters. So, let's dive into this case. Because the details matter, the timeline matters, and somewhere out there, there might be another Emily who still needs to be found. I'll never forget the first time I came across Emily Carter's case. It was one of those missing children stories that just gets under your skin and stays there. 9-year-old Emily vanished without a trace on October 14th, 2003, right after school in Millbrook, Pennsylvania. One minute she was walking home with her backpack covered in butterfly stickers. The next, she was just gone. Witnesses said they saw her at the corner store buying candy around 3:45 p.m. But after that, nothing. This wasn't some runaway situation or a custody dispute. This was a child disappearance that had all the haunting cold cases hallmarks you can imagine. No body, no witnesses, no leads, and a family left in absolute devastation. The thing about unsolved cases involving vanished kids is they create this ripple effect through entire communities. Millbrook was no exception. Emily's mom, Sarah, told me years later she'd walk those same streets every single day for months, calling her daughter's name until her voice gave out. The shocking revelations in this case wouldn't come for nearly 2 decades, but even on day 1, investigators knew something was terribly wrong. See, Emily was the kind of kid who followed rules. She never talked to strangers, always came straight home, and had a routine you could set your watch to. When a child that predictable suddenly disappears, it sends up every red flag imaginable. The mysterious disappearances that haunt our true crime stories often start exactly like this. What made Emily's case particularly heartbreaking was how close she was to safety when she vanished. Her house was literally 3 blocks from that corner store, a 7-minute walk she'd made hundreds of times before. But those 3 blocks became a dark storytelling nightmare that would consume investigators for years. The abducted child scenario seemed most likely, but without witnesses or physical evidence, the case went cold faster than anyone wanted to admit. Emily's family didn't know it then, but they were about to enter a nightmare that would last 18 years. The first 48 hours in child abduction cases are absolutely critical. After that, the chances of finding a missing person alive drop dramatically. And what they'd eventually discover, it would shake everything they thought they knew about that October afternoon. Look, I've spent countless hours digging through the investigation files on Emily Carter's disappearance. The detectives on this case left no stone unturned in those early days. They interviewed over 200 people in the first week alone, Teachers, neighbors, store clerks, even the crossing guard who'd seen Emily that afternoon. The FBI got involved immediately, which tells you how seriously they took this missing persons case from the start. They set up roadblocks, searched every abandoned building within a 10-mile radius, and brought in cadaver dogs. Those dogs combed through the woods surrounding Millbrook for days. But here's the frustrating part about these cold cases. Sometimes you can do everything right and still come up empty-handed. Every lead they chased seemed to evaporate into thin air. Nothing but dead ends and shattered hope. The investigation turned up some peculiar details that didn't quite add up, though. Security footage from the corner store showed Emily leaving at exactly 3:47 p.m. She was clutching a bag of gummy bears and humming to herself. Completely normal behavior for a kid without a care in the world. But then investigators found her backpack abandoned in an alley 2 blocks from her house. And that's when the unresolved mystery really began to spiral. Why would someone take Emily but leave the backpack behind? Was it staged? The shocking truth revealed years later would answer these questions. But back in 2003, detectives were working blind. They even brought in a psychic at one point. That's how desperate the family tragedy had become. I'm not saying psychics work, but when you're dealing with mysterious disappearances and you've exhausted every rational option, people will grasp at anything. What really haunted investigators was the complete lack of physical evidence. No signs of struggle, no witnesses reporting screams or suspicious vehicles, no DNA evidence. It was like Emily had simply dissolved into the October air. The lead detective, Marcus Webb, told reporters he'd never seen anything quite like it in his 25 years working missing children cases. They questioned registered offenders in the area, looked into online predators, even investigated Emily's own family members. Standard protocol in child disappearance investigations, though it tore the Carters apart emotionally. By 2005, Emily Carter's case had gone completely cold. And I mean the kind of cold that makes investigators sick to their stomachs. The missing children posters that once covered every storefront in Millbrook started fading in the sun. They got replaced by newer tragedies and fresher leads. Sarah Carter never stopped searching, though. She became one of those mothers you see in true crime stories who refuses to let the world forget. She organized annual vigils, appeared on local news segments, and even started a foundation for vanished kids. That foundation is still running today, actually, but here's the brutal reality of unsolved cases. After the media moves on and the volunteers stop showing up, families are left alone with their grief and unanswered questions. The FBI scaled back their involvement, local police reassigned detectives to active cases. Emily's file got moved to a storage room with hundreds of other cold cases that haunt the system. What's particularly devastating about child abduction cases that go cold is how they freeze families in time. Sarah couldn't move, couldn't grieve properly, couldn't even think about closure because there was none. Emily's younger brother, Jake, grew up in the shadow of his disappeared without a trace sister. He watched his mother obsess over every new tip and every supposed sighting that went nowhere. The family tragedy extended beyond just Emily's absence. It consumed everyone she'd left behind. Birthdays came and went. Holidays felt hollow. Every time the phone rang, Sarah would jump, hoping it was the call that would finally bring answers. Instead, years passed with nothing but silence and the occasional crank call. People claiming they'd seen Emily would send the family on wild goose chases across state lines. The emotional true crime aspect of this case really hit me when I discovered Sarah's journals from those years. She documented everything in those journals. She was convinced that some tiny detail everyone else missed would crack the case wide open. She wrote about dreams where Emily came home, nightmares where she found her daughter's body. By 2010, even the most optimistic investigators privately believed Emily was gone forever. Nobody wanted to say it out loud, though. Detective Webb retired in 2015, and in his exit interview, he mentioned Emily's case as the one failure that still kept him up at night. In March 2021, a property developer in rural Vermont was preparing to demolish an old farmhouse. Workers found something that would change everything. Hidden behind a false wall in the basement, they discovered a small room, maybe 8 by 10 feet. Inside was a mattress, children's drawings taped to the walls, and a stack of notebooks filled with handwritten entries. Now, finding weird stuff in old houses isn't that unusual, right? But one of the workers noticed something that made his blood run cold. The drawings were signed Emily and dated from 2003 to 2011. He immediately called the police. Within hours, the FBI had descended on this property, treating it like the crime scene it clearly was. This wasn't just some random discovery. This was potentially the breakthrough in one of the most haunting stories to come out of Pennsylvania in the early 2000s. The shocking revelations were just beginning. What investigators found in those notebooks would answer questions that had tortured the Carter family for 18 years. The notebooks were absolutely haunting. Emily had documented her captivity in heartbreaking detail. She wrote about her daily routines, her captor's rules, and her desperate hope that someone would find her. I've read excerpts from those entries, and they're almost impossible to get through without breaking down. She wrote about missing her mom's lasagna, about wondering if her brother still remembered her, about counting the days until her next birthday that never came with celebration. What made this discovery even more crucial was that Emily had carefully documented physical descriptions, schedules, and details about her abductor. This kid was 9 years old when she disappeared, but she had the presence of mind to gather evidence even in captivity. The found years later scenario that everyone had prayed for was finally happening. But the question that haunted everyone was this: if Emily was here until 2011, where was she now? The property records sent investigators down a rabbit hole. The farmhouse had been owned by a man named Leonard Briggs, a 67-year-old retired electrician with no criminal record and absolutely no connection to Millbrook, Pennsylvania. At least not on paper. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a genealogy database that had nothing to do with the criminal investigation initially. A woman named Emma Blackwell had submitted her DNA to one of those ancestry websites in 2020. Just curious about her heritage like millions of other people do. But when investigators ran Emily Carter's DNA profile through the same database, they got a hit that seemed impossible. Emma Blackwell was Emily Carter. I've covered dozens of missing children cases, and this kind of years later discovered scenario is incredibly rare. Most of these stories don't end with the child being found alive, let alone living under a completely different identity. Emma was 27 years old, working as a veterinary technician in Burlington, Vermont. Married, with no memory of ever being Emily Carter. The shocking truth revealed in this case wasn't just about finding a missing person. It was about uncovering a psychological manipulation so complete that Emily had been erased and replaced entirely. When investigators approached Emma with this information, she initially thought it was some kind of scam or mistake. She had memories of her childhood, growing up with her father, Leonard, on that isolated farm, being homeschooled, rarely leaving the property, because she was told she had a rare medical condition that made the outside world dangerous. Leonard had crafted an entire false reality, and because Emily was so young when she was taken, those fabricated memories became her truth. The unresolved mystery of what happened between 2011 and Leonard's death in 2019 started to piece itself together. Around 2011, when Emily was 17, Leonard had apparently decided she was ready for limited freedom. He'd created fake identification documents, enrolled her in online courses, and gradually integrated her into society, but always under his control and surveillance. This wasn't just kidnapping. This was a complete psychological reconstruction of a human being, and it's one of the most disturbing aspects of child abduction cases that people don't always understand. The reunion between Emma and Sarah Carter was both beautiful and absolutely devastating. A mother finally holding her daughter after 18 years. But that daughter had no emotional memory of being her child. Emily Carter's case forces us to sit with some really uncomfortable questions that don't have easy answers. How many other missing children are out there living under false identities? Their true memories buried so deep they don't even know they're lost. How many cold cases could be solved if we looked beyond the traditional investigative methods? This case proves that the window for finding missing persons doesn't actually close. It just changes shape. Emily was technically found because of a genealogy test she took out of simple curiosity, which makes you wonder what other tools and technologies we're not fully utilizing in these investigations. I think about Sarah Carter a lot, a mother who refused to give up even when everyone around her had moved on, who kept her daughter's memory alive through sheer force of will for 18 years. Her determination didn't directly solve the case, but it kept Emily's name in the system. That matters. Every vigil, every interview, every poster she hung up was another thread connecting past to present. And eventually, one of those threads led back to her daughter. But I also think about the bittersweet reality of their reunion. Finding your child alive after nearly 2 decades should be pure joy, yet it's complicated by loss and trauma. The 9-year-old girl who loved butterfly stickers and gummy bears is gone, replaced by a 27-year-old woman struggling to reconcile two completely different identities. Here's what keeps me up at night about cases like this. Leonard Briggs wasn't some obvious monster with a criminal record. He was a retired electrician who blended seamlessly into society while holding a child captive for years. He did contract work in neighborhoods just like yours, walked past people in grocery stores, existed in the world as a seemingly normal person while committing one of the most heinous crimes imaginable. That's the dark truth about child abduction cases we need to face. So, I want to ask you something, and I really want you to think about this. What can we do differently? How do we create communities where children like Emily don't slip through the cracks? How do we support families like the Carters, who are living in that nightmare limbo of not knowing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and these conversations matter. If you want to continue learning about these important missing children cases, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Every week, we're diving deep into stories that need to be told, victims who deserve to be remembered, and families who are still searching for answers. These cases matter. These children matter. And keeping their stories alive might just be the thing that brings the next Emily home.